Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digi Finance video. So today I'm hopping back over on UUTAIA for their sales rankings, and this time it's a little bit different, and this is the early sales rankings of the best-selling card in each of the different rarities for the early sales of Double Dimond or BT06. So first up, we have the best-selling SR during this time period, and it is looking to be Jesmon. So Jesmon is not only just a really popular Digimon, but he is a really powerful Digimon as well. So what makes him really powerful is all of his synergy and applications that he has with not only just himself and his package, but everything else that Red was doing as a whole. So his first ability is a when attacking ability, where you get to play one Sistermon from your hand or trash for free. So we already know that Sistermons are going to be interacting with Hackmon and Royal Knights, so you could think about utilizing some other Royal Knights on top of just the self-synergy of the Hackmons. So Sistermons are definitely looking to be a very powerful and important piece in this deck, and being able to play them for free off of Jesmon is just really, really powerful. And what's crazy is this ability isn't once per turn, so if you're able to attack with Jesmon multiple times, then you'll get multiple instances of this ability off, being able to play multiple Sistermons. So that's just really, really powerful, and on top of which his second ability synergizes with his first ability, where during your turn, once per turn, when another Digimon is played, then you get to increase this Digimon's DP by 3000, and he gains the piercing ability until the end of the turn. So this is just really powerful because piercing is just a very powerful keyword, ensuring that you're always going to be dealing damage, and he even self-DP boosts himself, so when he's attacking, he's not only just going to be playing a Sistermon, but that'll trigger his second ability to give him plus 3000, so he's going to be swinging for 14k with piercing on top of whatever benefits you're getting off of the Sistermon. So his abilities and self-synergies alone is already looking to be pretty strong, and as such, it is making him a really popular deck to want to pick up, and a lot of people are definitely already picking up the deck and thinking about it, because this is basically almost the equivalent of what Crusadermon was doing back in BT05, except now it's in red and you have all of the red tools. So some of the red tools that you could utilize is some of the other Royal Knights, because the Sistermons can also just work and synergize with other Royal Knights, and on top of which you also have some really good tamers that you could think about utilizing, like Tai from BT01, to just to increase his overall security damage, because he's already going to be giving himself piercing to ensure that you're going to be dealing security damage. So all of this put together just make Jesmon a really powerful Digimon to be playing. Next up, the best-selling rare in the set is going to be Hackmon. So Hackmon is the rookie form of Jesmon, and like I said before, the Jesmon deck is going to be a very powerful deck in BT06, so it only makes sense as people are going to be picking up Jesmon, people are also looking to pick up Hackmon as well. So what Hackmon is doing is he has this nice ability where he has an on-play ability where you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and add up to 2 cards that include Hackmon, Jesmon, or Sistermon in their name, and put it into your hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So he is the deck's engine card, where you just play him to try to dig out the cards that you're looking for, so that way your deck is going to be as consistent as it possibly can be, and red definitely needs as much consistency as it can, considering it is one of the colors that is a little on the shyer side when it comes to drawing cards and filtering cards, so it only makes sense that people really want to make sure that they're playing Hackmon, so that way they could ensure that they're always going to be as consistent as they possibly can be. Next up, we have the best-selling uncommon, and it is looking to be Gabumon. So this version of Gabumon synergizes really nicely with Gabumon Bond of Friendship, and the Gabumon Bond of Friendship deck is looking to be a very popular and very powerful deck out of the set as well. So it only makes sense that as more people want to play that deck, then you'll want to pick up the cards that synergize with it the best, and there's no better one than this Gabumon. So what this Gabumon is doing is he has an ability where once per turn, when a tamer with Mat is played, then you get to increase your memory by 1. So this synergizes really nicely with the new Mat out of BT06, And the new mat basically just lets you use this Gabumon, or really any Gabumon that's blue, to warp up all the way into Bond of Friendship, and that's just really, really powerful to think about. And this Gabumon will reward you when you play your mats by basically making them a discount of 1, even though you are technically gaining the memory and it's not reducing its cost. It's still just the fact that it's making playing your mats that much more efficient on why you want to be playing this card. And on top of which, he has a really nice inheritable source where when attacking once per turn, when this Digimon is a Gabumon Bond of Friendship, then you can make this Digimon active. So the whole idea is to use this as the inheritable source for Gabumon Bond of Friendship, so that way you could get as many attacks off with a level 7 as quickly as you possibly can, and because you're going to be warping with Matt into Gabumon Bond of Friendship, you're able to just surprise the opponent and aggress very early on if you have the full setup. So all of that combined is just making the Gabumon deck look very, very good, and it definitely so far is performing relatively well. And then the best-selling common for the early sales of BT06 is going to be Eosmon. So this version of Eosmon is the level 5, and it has the really unique ability where you could basically play any number of this card in your deck, and that's probably leading to why this is the best-selling common, even though Eosmon isn't the best performing deck. It's just more people are going to be picking up this card because it's needed in a higher amount of quantities. So it only makes sense that if people want to play Eosmon, then they're going to be buying a whole bunch of this version of Eosmon just because of that ability alone. But what it's also doing for the Eosmon deck is really powerful because it has a nice ability where when attacking, you get to play from your hand one Eosmon that's level 5 or less for free. So not only does she just allow you to have as many copies of her as you want, but she also is helping spawn more copies of Eosmon, and that's just already really powerful because anytime a card is playing another card for free, that's just usually a very powerful thing on tempo, and it's usually a very aggressive ability. And then on top of that, she even has a nice inheritable ability where during your turn, you get to increase the DP of this Digimon by 1,000, thus making the level 6 Eosmon that much more powerful to be playing with. And we know that the level 6 Eosmon wants to be interacting with the level 5 to put as many underneath as you possibly can, so that way the level 6 is going to be as powerful as it possibly can and gain some additional benefits for it. So it only just makes sense that people who are looking to play Eosmon are buying up more copies of this common versus any other common in the game, just because of that first ability alone, and the fact that Eosmon is still a relatively decent deck. Even though it's not the top deck, it's still doing some work. So hopping over to the DTCG review datasheet, where we get to take a look at a whole bunch of fun statistics and numbers. This kind of is showing and supporting a lot of what has been selling and a lot of what has been performing. So we know that even though there was a downtick in red, red is still performing relatively well, and we see this ginormous uptick in blue because a lot of people are going to be playing a lot of blue decks, not only just because Bond of Friendship is looking to be a powerful deck, but because of Azulongmon and the big updates that it's adding to the Hexablaumon deck. So it's definitely looking like the meta is taking a ginormous shift. Even though yellow is on the downtick, it's not realistically on the downtick because, again, what this data doesn't incorporate is the use of hybrid decks. So there's a whole hybrid section that's not utilized in any of this data, and there's, trust me, a lot of hybrid decks that's heavily influencing how the meta is being played, on top of the monocolor decks that are being played as well. But what's really interesting is that they also have some other data that we could take a look at in terms of what some of the new megas are doing in BT06. So we could see that Jesmon is, of course, one of the higher played megas in BT06. So as I mentioned before, it only makes sense as a lot of people are playing the deck or want to play the deck. People are going to be buying up the card. And same thing with Bond of Friendship, where he is interacting very nicely with Gabumon, and that Gabumon is a very powerful piece to that deck. So, of course, people who are playing that deck want to pick up that card. And then, like I said before, there's just a whole bunch of hybrid decks that are being played that aren't necessarily being accounted for in this data. So there's a lot of multicolor Musketeer controls, there's a lot of Bond of Friendship and Bond of Courage, and there's even some other really interesting decks in here as well. So like I said, this graph isn't necessarily the most accurate when it comes to reflecting the overall meta, but it does help us correlate that what's being played and what's being sold in Japan do have some correlation. And then as far as the English secondary market, it's still performing rather well. It's just right now there's still a huge influx of 1.0 and 1.5 cards. So a lot of the singles in terms of 1.0 and 1.5 are going down. And as those cards' value continue to decrease, so does the booster box prices. So the booster box prices are slightly on the downtick. It's not necessarily a huge downtick compared to what it was before, but seeing it go down still is relatively good because that just helps the overall accessibility of the game. But if you are just looking to get into the game, figuring out what you want to play and buying the singles is just a better idea as of right now when it comes to picking up 1.0 and 1.5 cards, just because there is a whole bunch of them on the secondary market, and it is going to be cheaper in the long run than just buying a couple of boxes and hoping you pull what you need. So as I continue just to scroll down on some of the top selling cards, we can see that a lot of the prices definitely have dropped a significant amount when it comes to 1.0 and 1.5 cards. So the infamous Omnimon is now cooling off and he is hitting a more normal or stable level, where just the over $100 price tag wasn't necessarily super sustainable, especially with the ginormous shift in meta that's going to be coming. There's just going to be a lot less attention on them, and as more are opening up and more people are thinking about selling them, then it only just makes sense for him and basically a whole bunch of other cards as well to drop because of the coming meta change. But because of the coming meta change, you do have to understand what some of the cards that you are going to be picking up that you need from 1.0 and 1.5 are. So I would do that sooner rather than later, because once the meta starts stabilizing and setting in, then a lot of those cards that are going to be played, or the more played ones, will go up in price. So keep that in mind when figuring out what you want, and best judge when you should be picking that up. And then in terms of the new set is going to be set to release on the 11th, so that's when the pre-sale tag will go away, and the flood of sellers will start posting as well. Right now, as we can see, there's just not a whole lot of listings for a lot of the singles on the cards, just because not a lot of people who sell on TCG Player are official shops and have the capacity to do so. So TCG Player, as I mentioned before, really limits on pre-sale who can start selling early. So buyer beware on buying any pre-sale cards, because we already know the pull rates for BT04, and they are a lot more generous than they were in the past. So on average, you're going to be getting 10 hits in a box. So the overall SR price is going to be rather low, just because it's going to be relatively easy to open anything you need in a given box. So do I think War Greymon, as an example, is going to stay at that $42 range? Probably not. We saw a very similar thing with Shine Greymon, where he was like on pre-sale for $30, and now he's sub $10 just because there's a whole bunch on the market, and he is a relatively easy card to pull. So War Greymon is probably going to follow that same trend, except because he is the new hotness, he's going to hold a slightly higher price tag, so he's probably going to be cooling off at around that 15 to 20 range. But I do not expect the majority of these cards to hold at their current price, just because it is going to be a lot easier to pull them than people expect. So there's just going to be a ton of this on the market, and I don't know exactly how much of BT04 is going to be open compared to the other sets, but I would suggest that if you could sell your cards as fast as you possibly can, if you are planning on selling your cards, then sell within that first month, because we are expecting a reprint wave or a restock wave of BT04 coming next month, and then once that hits, then the singles are going to get crushed, similar to how they are getting crushed in 1.0 and 1.5. All depending on how much of that restock wave is coming. So if it's a big restock wave, then it's getting crushed for sure. If it's not, then the prices will slightly go down, but they'll stay the same for the majority of them, just because we didn't get a whole lot. And there's not a whole lot of new stock being put on the secondary market. But either way, this goes to show you that you really shouldn't be thinking about buying cards on pre-sale most of the time. There are some rare occasions where there are some cards that do increase in value just because of perception and rarity. So Lucimon is supposedly, as of right now, theoretically being short printed, so that is a card that I would consider picking up sooner rather than later, on top of which it is a secret rare, and secret rares have the same pull rates, so if that's a short printed secret rare, then that card will probably actually go up or remain its current price. But that'll just make the other secret rares go down in price just because they'll be the easier ones to get. And they're going to be the ones that people are going to be selling off the most, especially since they have a promo that's tied to them that make them even more playable than they are normally. So if people are unable to actually get the promo, then that'll definitely influence how that card is going to be played. And if that card isn't going to be widely played because not a lot of people can get the promo, then its price is only going to further decrease as a result. So depending on how the meta and the accessibility of certain cards shape up, that could also help influence what the card's price is going. But for the majority of these cards, a lot of them are overpriced just because early sellers can actually get away with it, just because there's not a whole lot of sellers that they're actually competing with. So once those floodgates open and people list more and more, then the price will definitely drop and stabilize to a more normal level after a certain period of time, just because we need the meta to settle in and we also need the price to settle in and stop fluctuating. But speaking of promos, promos are always going to be in a really interesting spot because most of the time alt arts, promos, and secrets are going to be where the money's at. Again, not all secrets are going to be worth money. It just depends on what the secret is. But because it does have a higher rarity than some of the others, it'll usually have a slightly higher price compared to a lot of the other rarities. But I digress. Promos and alt arts are usually going to be where the money is in terms of Digimon. And the promos that we're going to be getting with BT04 are no different. I do think that the Dash Pack promo cards are a little bit on the overpriced side, just because the Dash Pack cards are going to be more commonly in supply and easier to get than the Anniversary Packs, but the Anniversary promos are definitely going to be the ones that you really want to seek out, just because these are the ones that actually have a higher influence on the overall meta. Not saying that these two don't have a high influence on the meta, but if you just have a Grand Kawagumon, then he's not really going to be doing a whole lot without the other half, which is going to be the Palmon. So what's really making something like this powerful is more coming from the Anniversary side. So definitely something like this is going to be more sought after just because it can apply into more decks than something like Grand Kawaga. And same is kind of true for Metal Garurumon, where it's like it is just a good option and tech tool to think about, but it's not going to define what Purple is doing as a whole in the format and in the set. But regardless, the Anniversary promos are definitely going to be the hot promos that you want to pick up sooner rather than later, and they're going to be the harder ones to get just because of how they're being distributed. So the Dash Packs are going to be basically 2 with every box and 1 with every 2 starter decks. So theoretically, you're going to end up seeing more of them, and with a 1 in 3 chance of pulling any of the given cards, then it's going to be rather easy to pull any of the single one that you are trying to get. Versus the Great Legends Power Up Pack or Anniversary Pack, where it'll basically take you buying a case to guarantee a full playset mathematically of any of the given cards. So it's just going to be a lot harder to obtain the Great Legends power-up cards versus the Dash Pack cards, so I definitely expect the Dash Pack cards to go down in price, while I expect the power-up cards to go up in price. And it is a little bit unfortunate that both of those are very meta-defining packs, and they are all promos, so they're definitely going to be a little bit on the harder side, and that could limit the accessibility and playability of a lot of the singles in BT04. So let's just take Dandevimon as an example, where it's like, how often are you actually going to see Dandevimon being played outside of his deck? And that answer is going to be a lot lower, so if something like the Devimon promo was more accessible, then more people would consider picking up Dandevimon. But if they're not, then they want to try to get rid of that card, and that's just going to create more overall stock in the secondary market, supposedly, just because you don't want to play Dandevimon without the promo that interacts with him to really make him a strong card to be playing around with. and that could be said with a whole bunch of other cards, so that is just a slightly unfortunate side effect of just how these promos are working. But in terms of secondary market value, it's definitely a really good thing because it creates a lot of demand, and it'll be easy to get the other cards that you want as long as you have the main card that's going to be the most expensive card to get. And then in terms of the pre-release promos, I definitely think that the pre-release promos of Pulsemon and Magna Angemon are still going to be a little bit hot of cards, considering how new they are to the secondary market. But I think the Magna Angemon being more of a trophy card rather than a worthwhile reprint definitely hurts his overall playability and secondary market value. But the fact that he is a hard-to-get trophy card means he still will hold some relatively decent value. And then as far as Pulsemon's concerned, as more people are getting their cards from the mail or attending their pre-releases, I think more Pulsemons are going to be hitting the secondary market and his price is slightly going to be dipping, but I think where he's currently at is a rather fine place just because he is a very highly played card if you are going to be playing the color yellow. And speaking of pre-release, I'm not entirely sure what to value a lot of the pre-release stamped cards at, but I would probably just say pay what you feel like you're more comfortable with, considering these are going to be rarer versions of the card, because they do have that pre-release stamp, and some of them, especially the more highly played ones, are going to be holding a higher value and have an overall higher demand. So something like a stamped Chaosmon definitely will be more expensive than the normal one, just because that version of the card is going to be higher. But considering that the rares and below are relatively easy to open in the set, I think you're at least guaranteed one of every single rare, if not two of most rares in a single booster box, means that it's going to be relatively easy to get any single rare or below that you want in the set. Same with uncommons. I believe you'll get at least two of every uncommon and three of some uncommons in one single booster box. So take it with a grain of salt on how much you value that stamp that just says pre-release. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are different ways that you could support me in the channel. So one of those ways is I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so whenever you use that affiliate link to buy cards off of tcgplayer.com, then some of the money will go to supporting me in the channel. And on top of which, I also do stream over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. So following and subbing is a good way to support me over on that platform as well. And on top of that, I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook. So whenever you buy one of my designs through them, then some of that money will also help go to supporting me in the channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.